my cosmetic fresh up and put my toupee on the head and...
Next time. And this tulsi came from which part of India?
Here in West Bengal. It's local.
Some friends of yours?
Yeah, actually a friend of mine has a field, but his tulsi harvest didn't work out. So he had to ask another farmer. He came just 2-3 days back. And I mean, actually tulsi is a quite expensive herb also. Mm-hmm. It's sort of rare. And I mean, I showed you the photograph. It was really in a very nice condition. And as I heard, I'm not an expert on it. He told me actually that rather June, July is a season where you get tulsi for the harvest. But as it is here, a lot of things you get 2 times in a year harvest. So we got this fresh one. And of course, I use it rather as a medicine Ayurvedic sort of an addition. So in this winter season, when you get the colds and stuff, this stuff is not the boost for immune system and general calm and but it is like a lot of things I have watched, you know. Turmeric, for instance, is known as a very strong blood cleaner and stuff. I mean, people don't know so much about what sort of treasures in natural things they have. So now you have seen the big photograph how it was growing like a field, and everything left is here by the power of sun. Try to make it simple, you know, you will always have there's a side way there. So in that way it is difficult. Okay, simple practically, I came 25 years ago the first time to India. Mm-hmm. I was born and brought up in the eastern part of Germany. So
English, please?
Oh my God, it's too small for people to know. It was in the north of East Germany. I mean, the biggest town people would know would be Hamburg, 100 kilometers from Hamburg towards the east. So pretty countryside sort of thing. And when this whole reuniting happened...
But what was the name of your village? Or small city? What was that?
Okay, if you want to know, the small city is called Parchim.
Okay.
So anyway, from there I came 89 to Leipzig. Leipzig, you know, is a bit quite big in the east. It has a nice university. So I was about to go to a theater school to join there. But at that time I was still in university. And then, totally unexpected for me, being an 18 years old boy coming rather from the countryside to a big town, this whole political change happened. The people were going for demonstrations. Remember in 89, I don't know what age. Sorry if I ask you.
44.
So. You have seen that things live also. I mean, at least in the news.
And you was born in which?
I'm 46, so I'm 70. Okay. Born in 70. So this was whole life story sort of thing. You came as a youngster, was 18 years later, suddenly everything changed. And in 1919, the whole structure was completely, gone sort of thing. Lot of chances were there, so... In those days I made theater, I made music, whatever happened. I left university, I didn't study, of course, because chances were a lot of chances.
But what you wanted to study at university? What was your...
Actually, I was approaching to study acting, but we had a very limited scope of acting schools, theater schools. So, and I actually also didn't want to be an actor, I wanted to be a director. So, but the way was those days in these Eastern times, you know, you had to become an actor, then you went through, there were no other ways. It doesn't matter. So that was side business, let's say, from there. Short after that, in already 1991, my first contact to India came in form of, well, it was not even me, it was my, those days, living partner. She went for some meditations and she brought a few people home which were connected with some spiritual guru. And I was interested in spiritual subjects. I found it a bit strange, Indian guru, it sounded all a bit, you know.
In Leipzig itself?
Huh?
In Leipzig?
In Leipzig, it was still in Leipzig. It was still in Leipzig. Well, I was a little bit, you know, okay, guru and things, that was not so much my thing. But what happened, they brought some tapes with a strange music, which turned out later to be Indian classical music. First time I came in contact with that. Some recordings. Bansuri, violin, whatever.
Ravi Shankar?
No, it was not even Ravi Shankar. It was rather, they used it for meditation, so it was rather something, you know, which you would listen there. One of the sounds caught really strongly my attention, that was tabla. I heard this percussion instrument and I thought, wow, how is that possible? After somebody explained me, I saw this done by some dubbing, you know, when you hear all the bowls at once, you think it's not possible for one human being to play that. Then we were visiting one of their meditation centers and there was somebody sitting who had learned the basics, and he said, no, this is not electronically done. It is done with all your fingers. And I got really caught up with that. So I've done a lot. I've learned violin, Western violin as a child, theater, cinema, all sort of influences, but this thing somehow caught me. At the same time, I got a little bit more familiar with the spiritual ideas of that school. It was, or the way is called Sant Mat, it is meditation on what they call inner light and sound. Doesn't matter so much. So I thought, okay, if this thing is really something interesting, worthwhile, you should go to India to check it out. And within a short time, just within 2-3 months, this is my way of working out things. I found myself on the way to Delhi, spending a few months in an ashram, learning a little bit basics of tabla and doing a lot of meditation.
For the first time?
For the first time, yeah. That was
91,
92, the winter season, 91, 92. So I got initiated there by my Guruji, Santaka Singhji. And so main approach was rather the spiritual one. The music was, on the other hand, there caught their attention. I learned a little bit basics of tabla, as you would do in meditation centers, some bhajan, rather the light classical, not the classical music. And from there I proceeded, then I came back to Germany. I spent almost 2 years, more or less intensive with meditation to figure out what to do with it. And after that, the approach for things, the likings for things had changed quite a lot. The way how I looked on whatever I had done before in cultural ways, the Western culture, I was not so much interested. So this Indian classical music, which I went on listening, that was really something where I felt, okay, if you want to put in your creative powers, you will have to go on with that. And from there, my journey started to go more serious into Indian classical music. I learned, again, for 1-2 years more in Germany, the basics of tabla, whatever basic bowls are there. And then in 95, 96, I thought, okay, it's time to go back to India to really study it there under proper guru. And as it happened with most of the people we are approaching, the most famous artist, no, actually it was a friend of mine, did know Pandit Anindra Chatterjee quite well. Kolkata. He used to live just 5 minutes from here. And so I came in contact with him. He's a very sweet person. Even me as a beginner, he invited openly, just come over, stay here, learn. And that's how it happened. And so I came in 96, in the winter season 96, I came to Calcutta for half a year.
To learn tabla, basically.
To learn tabla. And melody-wise, I had heard, of course, all the instruments, at least in the recordings, what is there in Hindustani classical music. And I heard veena also, but and it had struck my heart a lot. And I was running around in Calcutta also being a tabla student and thinking, where could I find a concert where I can hear this strange instrument live? Just learning the sad truth that the veena has become so rare that there are hardly any players anymore left, and so no concerts are happening. And like that I spent almost half a year there, and then one day, as it happened in Dovalin Music Conference, a friend of mine, also a tabla student, he pointed out and he said, see this guy there, and it was an old fellow, again a foreigner. He was a Swedish guy, as I learned later. His name was Peter Hennigs. So he said, Peter has learned Veena actually with Ustad Ziauddin Dagar, and now he's learning with Ustad Asad Ali Khansa. Ziauddin Dagar had passed away in 1990, that we were already in 1996. So I approached him, I asked him about the matter, and he was kind enough to introduce me to the whole subject. I mean, I didn't know already this Veena is so rare that there are even no makers. The only maker which you could call a really Veena maker, who had made the instruments for certain masters like Ziauddin Dagar and Asad Ali Khansa. He had closed the shop already in 95. Murari Mohan Adhikari was his name, from Kanna Lalin Brothers. This was a very famous shop, Kanna Lalin Brothers, famous shop for old classical sort of instruments, sobaha, sitar. They were especially really well known for that.
Where did they have the showroom?
Chitpur Road, Upper Chitpur Road was as well. When I came into the scene, the thing was already gone. But I did know about, I had seen some instruments from him. So now this Peter, who introduced me to the whole matter, he was here in Kolkata again to repair some old Veena of his. And he said, see, the situation is so bad, you can even not go to any normal instrument maker who would be maybe famous for sitar or sarod and ask to repair your Veena. Not to ask for a new Veena, but even they would not touch your Veena to repair it. Because superstition is still very strong if you don't do the right pujas, if you're not in the right way approaching the whole thing. The Rudra Veena, being connected with Lord Shiva, Rudra, one of his names, will bring any sort of bad luck up to that into your house. Very strictly. Because next thing was, I was telling to him, okay, he told me he is going back to Delhi to his Guruji, Ustad Asad Ali Khan Sahib, and he said, okay, you come along if you want, I will introduce you to him. And so it happened, we went to Delhi. I met Khan Sahib. And Khan Sahib was again also, I mean, Peter had prepared me, he said, he's a very orthodox person. It will be very difficult to approach him and this and that. So I was quite ready to take something, but he welcomed me quite open. And after just an evening in his music room, I was quite clear, okay, this is somewhat your musical future, by this or that way. So now the practical problem was really to learn Veena, of course, you have to have an instrument. And secondly, another problem Peter had already prepared me for, he said, see, the tradition of Khan Sahib is very strict. You won't be allowed directly to learn Veena. And that happened, as you said, Khan Sahib said, see, our tradition, the people first have to learn some vocal, to train the own instrument. It's very understandable, there's a logic behind it. Then you will train the fingers with a few years of sitar, and when those things are ready and fit, then you might go on for the Veena. But as Peter told me, you know, if you want to try to fulfill this whole way, especially coming from the West, having to go on and off, you are not like a youngster who can live there and stay there all the time. You might end up never to touch the Veena. So we did a little bit trick. He said, see, there's one way, you have to come with the instrument in your hand, you have to put it down to Khan Sahib's feet and ask him, please, Khan Sahib, you have to teach me. Well, that was a good idea, but then where to get the instrument? So we went back to Calcutta and we're roaming around to find anybody who could make an instrument or any used instrument. And after some time, we got at least some old stuff. And I mean, the instrument, my first Veena which I got, it was really a curiosity on its own. It was a traditional Veena in, let's say, it was maybe 40, 50 years old, something like that, I guess. The way how it was made, it would tell about that. And it was in a very bad condition. It clearly had to be repaired. So we brought it to the shop of the instruments maker's name is Manga Prasad Sharma. He was at those days the only one. He was basically, or he is still basically a sitar maker. Sitar and tampuras, sobahas, I think he's also making. And but he was ready to at least try. He didn't have much of experience, so I think for 2 months, every day I went there from noontime to nighttime, sitting in a shop, and he was working on this and working on that. He basically said also this instrument is dead. But we proceeded, and finally the day came where he took out his flower girland and took an akrabati and a big sip of his whiskey bottle. That was his sort of puja for veena anyway. And I could happily go with this instrument to Delhi back and approach Kansap, and he was kind enough, he said, then okay, see, then what we will do is you will learn vocal and veena at the same time. That's where we started. And
so you did both together?
Yeah.
Vocal and...
I mean, it makes totally sense. You can sit, I will encourage you, at the moment I'm not teaching because I'm too busy with making my own veenas, being a veena maker in a certain sense, and also being a player. I mean, I hope in future I will have time to teach, but I would, somebody who comes out of nothing, who has no experience so far, I would always advise, okay, you start with a bit of vocal, not to become a vocalist, but to train your own ear beside training the voice. This is very essential. If you only want to take an instrument, it's first of all like it's like a strange thing to your body. The voice is much closer, isn't it? And it is an old tradition in Indian classical music that you should train that any instrument music is coming from vocal. Drupat Ang, which we play on the veena, it is a vocal style. So.
And you start learning both vocal and instrument, which was very good for you, and you was absolutely happy.
It's the right way to learn. I would say any instrument, but especially in the veena also, because as you know, the Drupat Ang, general people have an idea now why it is not more so popular, because it would be sort of boring. It's just, I see some preconception people can have compared to the younger forms, musical forms, as we know, the khayal, compared to what you would hear on technical wizardry, on the sitar or sarod. You could say, yeah, it's a bit boring. Because if you can do that, all fascinating things, why would you do this old lame style listening for a 1 hour lap or whatever it is? So if you would approach from this side, if you would look with an outlook like this on it, then it would be, you would miss the main thing. What is veena about? What is Drupat about? See, the Drupat, in general, the facts. It's the oldest classical style of Hindustani classical music which is still performed today. It came from the chanting of the Vedas, turned into songs sung in the temple. It's a very rough outline only. From there it came to the courts, as well Mughal rulers as Hinduistic rulers, and there it developed into an art form. And being basically sort of the mother of Indian classical music, in the sense of khayal has drawn certain structural parts from it. The long alap we do in Drupat, a little bit is left, in khayal, or on the instrumental parts, at least 15 minutes, 20 minutes you would do still in alap. There you can see more of the forms. And in fact, a lot of the instrumental structure you find today played on a sarod as well as a sitar or anything, it came from the veena, if you study these things down. And so where I came from was actually why it is good to learn vocal and veena together, because the main focus in Drupat Ang and on the veena is developing a rag in the sense of the subtle intonation, what is called shruti. Any Indian classical, North Indian classical music will take care for that, but particularly here, it's like, you watch the things under a microscope. That's why you would choose a veena to play and not a sitar. Because here, the sustain of the instrument, the sound of the instruments, allows you to take really long, dwelling phrases and develop these things. Well, the veena itself took also a lot of evolutionary steps in the last 50 years. Like other instruments also, you see how the sarod from a small rubab, rather being a tong instrument, now comes to an instrument which can do a full octave slide and things. So something like that has happened to the veena in the last 50 years also. And I tell that because it is part of my personal journey of with the veena. When I approached Asad Ali Khan Sahab, I learned the veena played in the traditional style. For that you have to sit in Vajrasana and you play the instrument, one tumba here, one on the shoulder. This is a traditional way of holding the veena.
Muslim tradition, not Hindu. Hindus, they sit in a
No,
Padmasana.
that is what people tell. I tell you practically as a veena player, it doesn't depend whether you are a Muslim or you are a Hindu. This is a position in which you can control the instrument best. Yes, you could say it came maybe from the Mughal courts because everybody had to sit there. It's their tradition to sit like that. But there is a science behind that. If I sit in Sukhasana like that and I try to control the instrument like that, I mean, you can just test it for yourself. When I sit in Sukhasana, what is happening without a veena even, my body tends to fall like this, right? If I sit in Vajrasana, one of the things is that there are even tabla players, I mean singers who would sing like that because the advantage is my body is naturally straight, the tension is there. Now when I play a veena, let's go for a veena, that at least you get the idea. I mean, when I play the veena, this one is actually too big for this style, but I just show you the position of it. In this way, I have full control over a lot of things. First of all, I'm directly in the instrument. I can hear what is happening. The veena itself is a very silent instrument in spite of the huge resonators it has to do with the structure. There's basically no really sound box under the bridge. Not like in a sitar or sarod where you have the big belly and then you have a tabli, so it can all swing. So what's happening here is when you have this tumba here, one here, the sound of the veena can, especially of the old ones, this is a very strong instrument now. It's a rather modern interpretation. The old ones used to have a bamboo stick here. Naturally it was made from bamboo. You can understand because craftsmanship to drill such a big hole would have not been there even 50 years ago. They had to cut it open. And now what happened when you have it on the shoulder, the sound while you were playing would be controlled by your breathing. It would change. And when you sit in the Sukhasana, like this only, you can do it, but it is not the same control you have over the instrument here. That's why I'm telling you, it is not a question in the first instance of Muslim or Hindu, it is a question of being a veena player. And my Guruji would always stress on that, you have to sit in Vajrasana. Of course today you see other people performing problems with the knees, this problem, that problem, so you sit in that. But from the science of veena, that is an ideal thing. Now what happened to this traditional veena, which were much smaller and lighter? This instrument, for instance, it has around 10 to 11 kgs. So the old instruments had something like 2 to 3 kgs. Tumbas resonators were very small. Now this is a type of Rudra veena which was developed by Ustad Zia Momin Dagar in collaboration with this instrument maker which I told you before, Muradi Muanadikar. And what they did, basically, they made everything a bit bigger. The gourds became bigger. They added here a piece. The dant itself, the diameter became bigger. It was made out of teak wood instead of the old bamboo. Bridges all a little bit bigger. And even this is a version I have made in my own workshop now. Because out of lack of a real veena maker, I have worked the last 6-7 years, to make my own veenas here. And this is so big now you can't even play anymore on the shoulder. So what Dagar Sahib actually did, he took the position of the Saraswati veena, the South Indian veena, to play this instrument now. So it's kept like that. It combines in this way a little bit the South Indian veena style and the North Indian. Musically it's purely the same. There are some technical advantages in this way and some technical advantages in this way. The music style will change a bit, so my musical journey actually went on with both. I learned with Ustad Asad Ali Khan Sahib, of course, a traditional veena, but then later I learned also with
And this particular veena was done by wood? What kind of wood is this?
Okay, if you want to know about that, So the upper part is done out of teak wood. The teak wood comes, it is Burma teak, and is even minimum 100 years, even more old Burma teak. We got it from demolished houses, those beams. This is what very few instrument makers only would use, because those old beams, of course, tend to have cracks, holes, and this and that. So to get a huge piece like that without any damage, you have to invest quite a lot of money. Apart from that's also not so easily available. The idea behind is that actually teak wood is not a good sound wood, in the sense of it's not really ideal for instruments. Normally you would use something like tune wood, a lighter wood which has much lighter fiber and it can vibrate for the sound. Teak wood has a very dense fiber, it has a lot of oils in it. So the sound when you get a fresh teak wood would be rather very low on this anyway very silent instrument. And the idea is when you take the old seasoned wood, that a lot of this oils, actually the whole oil is gone out. So the sound can readily from the beginning unfold. And I mean you can see here, I'm not opening too much, you can see here.
And resonator is made of wood as well.
Huh?
It is wood or this is pumpkin?
This one, this is a pumpkin, it's a gourd.
It's a pumpkin, all of this.
Yes. So you can see here it is open. I have on the roof even I have one pair of this original raw tumba, what we call it, raw pumpkin. You can see the pumpkin is cut here and then some wood is applied here so that you get this sort of carving. And in old days, I mean this carving stuff, this is typical for Kolkata tradition because we have a lot of good carvers and craftsmen over here. Here you can see here the pumpkin is hollow. And it's opened here.
And this is made of what?
This is celluloid actually. This is a typical way to embellish instruments here. That is also rather something I would say it has come up in the last 50 years. But it's a very own technique also. I mean, this way how this is done, it's an own art. And it's done with almost all string instruments, more or less. So this are the two lower parts of the veena, and if you like, we will go just. I will show you a little bit an instrument which is still in construction because, I mean, this is actually another story. That's what I told you. We come from one road to the other. You can see here more veenas which are about to get ready. Those are almost finished veenas. It takes quite a lot of stages to finish them, and I will show you in the working room in our little workshop on the other side. So you can see. Here are two instruments which are under construction right now. So one is already in a quite advanced state. We have almost finished here the parda frets, which have a long process of being individually trimmed and adjusted to fit for the instrument. It's a very difficult sort of a job because of this particular fitting on a round tube. You know, we have a sitar, you have even a South Indian veena. Obviously, you have a flat sort of thing where you can put your metal sort of directly, but here you have to work with this half round. It's a very tricky thing, and it's no miracle that a normal instrument maker nowadays, you wouldn't find somebody who could do this thing so subtle that as a professional player you would be really happy with.
And the bridge is done by, is it ivory?
Yeah, actually this one is a plastic. This is what
Plastic.
they all use, but we use ivory, that's true. I mean, I use for this instruments the best materials all available. This is, for instance, this backside bridge which we call ara. This is also made from ivory. It will be fitted here. So in this instrument we have made it from a hardwood. This is just one instrument I made for testing from other materials. All the other instruments, it's a small series of 8 instruments, are done with ivory only. And this ivory is it's a certificated old stock ivory which we got from Germany. Means at least in Europe it is legal. In India,
In
normally
India, it is not legal anymore.
everything is banned in India. Everything is banned in India, but at least, see, I'm also not interested in seeing the killing of elephants, which is unfortunately happening nowadays even, because the black market is huge on ivory. But for these instruments, we really wanted to have the best materials available. And if
So you imported it from Germany?
I imported it from Germany. Of course, we don't have German elephants. The stocks there are from Africa. But at least I'm quite sure about that. These are really stocks from before it was banned. This is our bridge, which we use. It's quite huge. And that is one of the reasons why to use ivory, because we did it, this is an invention of myself, we did it in a bit longer fashion. It has sound reasons. And with normal materials, like they used the horn of the antler in the deer, you couldn't get this sort of length. A normal Javari would be having this size only. So you can use the plastic. I'm doing this one for a trial to see the sound difference in this one. But just feel this way, this material is working. And this is just a personal approach.
And it makes different sounds. Sound will be different.
It's also, see, the sound of the Javari, what we call Javari, the soul of the sound, it comes in the way how you slope this bridge, right? And this sloping has to be done by sanding, filing. And this material can be sanded and filed very easily. And the sound is, of course, a different
Will
one
be
also.
a little heavy, little more down. The sound will be different somehow.
And one thing, just from the moral aspect, if I could imagine anything worthwhile for an animal to die and to use his bones or whatever to be part of a veena, it will give him certainly a boost in the next incarnations. Let's see it from that part. Though I wouldn't ask an animal to be killed for that. Then you have alternates like the plastics or something. But for these particular veenas we made here, they are done with such a care and with such a choice of materials and design. You could straight away bring them to the museum. And I can tell you straight away, nobody anywhere today could make veenas like that. It's impossible. I can understand that an instrument maker here doesn't have the time, the money or whatever to. We worked in the 7 years now for 8 instruments. Which has not only to do because of the care we took. Of course, I had to learn things from the scratch and had to find people to do this or that. But it's worthwhile, at least for me as a veena player. You have to be a bit crazy for that. It has cost a fortune, besides time and energy also. I could have bought a flat for that. But anyway, and accordingly, it's of course not much worthwhile for an instrument maker to be a specialist on veenas. The other side is, of course, most of the people who are interested nowadays in the Rudra veena are actually Western students.
But who you are? You are 5 people of Rudra veena players. Do you mean in Kolkata?
I'm talking of the people who are performing here. There are, of course, more people who have learned it, who play maybe at home or something. There's Baudin Dagar, he's the son of Ustad Zirmundin Dagar. There is Jyoti Hegde, who is a guru behin of mine. She learned from Ustad Asad Ali Khan also. Okay. But basically she learned before from other veena players. She's the only female performing Rudra veena player.
What is her name?
Jyoti Hegde.
Hegde.
So
Kannada.
She is from
Karnataka.
Right, Karnataka. She lives quite remote on a village. Then we have Ashit Kumar Banerjee, who is a sort of oldest. I mentioned you before. He lives not very far from here. He's not more that much of a performer. His performing times are gone. Let's say like that. That's why I think I have even not counted in the 5. But I mentioned his name because he was a first instrumental student of Ustad Zirmundin Dagar in the end of the 60s. And I heard playing of his from the 70s. It was amazing. Somewhere on the road got lost. Anyway, he's teaching. Pial, which you just mentioned, learned in the last 1-2 years from him. Then, also not performing, I think that's why I didn't count him in. Zaki Haider is the son of Ustad Asad Ali Khan Sahab, nephew and adopted son of Ustad Asad Ali Khan Sahab. It's a personal story, but I think soon he will be also on the stage. Who else we have? Some gentleman called Suvir Mishra. He is I mean, he is rather an officer for government or something. So he's also not a full-time musician, but he performs. So I count him in also. And Hinraj Devika is there. He lives in Pune. He comes from an own family tradition. They play sitar and veena. But at least he plays veena also, and he is a professional musician. And also not a real performer, but he is there. His name is, I forgot his name now. He's the eldest son of Shamsuddin Faridi from Delhi. He was also a own line of veena players. Something like Zayuddin, something like that. But he also has to manage, I think, his living as somebody told me he sells ACs. This is a life a Rudra veena player today has to lead.
But that last question for you, this veena playing, does it mean, of course it's a journey, it's a long journey.
It's first of all a journey. If
but,
you want to become a successful musician, you should not touch the veena.
Do you know exactly what are you looking for, what are you searching for? Because the instrument still, it remains the instrument, means the tools for something. So do you know exactly what are you searching? Or that is not a question, that is maybe you will find out on the way.
See,
is it clear?
Yeah, it's quite clear. For me, it's quite clear. See, as I told you, my way to India and into the Indian classical music started from the spiritual point of view. And the meditation I'm doing regularly, it's called meditation on inner sound and light. So there is this concept in Hinduism, and in other religions you find it with other names, about what you could call that God created this whole creation by sound. Christians would say he spoke and it was done. There is this word of God. Nada Brahma in Hinduism, Om. And so there is this concept of Ahat and Anahat Nad. The unstruct and the struct sound. The one sound which cannot be heard by physical ears and the sound which is all taken by physical ears. So the veena has a long tradition not to be a performing instrument as an artist, which is also there and which I'm following also, but it has another tradition to rather be played by people who use it as a tool for meditation. You could say hermits, remote, who took this subtle sound of the veena to invoke this spiritual sound, which only can be heard, we could say, by the inner ear. So by focusing through the subtle sound of the veena, evoking this inner sound, and then from that get to a transcendental state of meditation, which is practically by the music of the veena also happening. Because the veena music is, first of all, it is definitely not entertaining music. Whether I play in this style or in that way, it is still Rudra veena. And that is also the question why you play Rudra veena. Whenever I think about the difficulties this instrument means, and there are endless difficulties, from attaining an instrument, so I had to become a maker to get my instrument on my own. Which musician would do that? To carrying it around with 3 huge boxes, 30 kgs, no organizers ready to pay you extra flight ticket or whatever, I mean, it's endless sort of thing, obstacles, but still, I couldn't choose any other instrument. Because this sound the veena creates has, I could say now, a depth, but then somebody will say, okay, Soba also has a depth, or Sarod has a own depth. It has something own, let's call it like that, which you will find only in the veena. And that is, if you want to say so, it's directly appealing to the soul. Any music is in some way, of course, entertaining the soul, but what I mean to say here, it goes to a certain depths, to a certain subtle thing you won't even find from other instruments. So this is a music you can really say, everybody in Indian classical music will say, oh, it's all meditation, this and that. This one is particularly designed for that purpose. So for a concert stage, for some people, like you heard my call before where I was saying who is going to listen, I have to ask that, because even people who know Indian classical music sometimes might felt a bit bored by our presentation. You can have easily an alapa for an hour. And people today enjoy most what?
they enjoy when the jala is getting fast and the tabla is doing his da-di-na. Huh? So in times like that, where the minds are set like that, it's difficult to entertain somebody with an instrument like that. And opposite, you can say those people who love the veena, you can be sure they have a draw towards inside sense. So between these two poles, being a performing instrument, being a spiritual instrument, we are moving. The personal journey is going. To give a last statement, like my Khan Sahib would say, veena learning veena is not about learning instrument, learning a music. It is shaping a human being, it's shaping a character. That's the main thing to be in that way.